I was experiencing sort of a glass ceiling. You can only get so far. And, you know, you couldn't get into the E-suite. Nobody was ringing my phone for that over the last 10 years. And people I've given opportunities to were passing me up, you know. So it was kind of crazy, you know. And so, you know, the only way you can't beat them, join them. I mean, you know, just slap the CEO, start my own business, and then go from there. And it's been such a blessing turning into an entrepreneur. And as a mortgage broker, I've helped a lot of mortgage brokers grow over the last 20 years or so. And I've seen them go from a small company into, I know this one banker that, you know, he went from small to now his net worth is about 147 million. So, I mean, it's possible. I know the roadmap. It's just a matter of just putting it all together and bringing a great team together and making it happen.
Yeah, I think you touched up on a couple of different things, because part of the weighing decision on why I left Kaiser and retired from Kaiser after 15 and a half years is because of that glass ceiling that you're talking about.
Yeah.
Sometimes you just get to a point where you're like, you know what? It's time for me to start my own business, have more of an entrepreneurial spirit. In the last 3 years of my career, I had start taking more ownership of my book of business and realizing this is my business. Although I work for Kaiser, this is my business, and it helped perpetuate or propel me into the next stage of life, which is becoming a business owner. But I met Rouvaun right after I had cracked through that glass ceiling, so to speak, and started my own business doing life insurance and being a financial professional. And I met Rouvaun. We both spoke at an event, and he spoke so intelligently and just he was very knowledgeable, and he spoke practically, and he didn't speak over people's heads. And that's kind of my style. I don't like to speak over people's heads. I like to give it to at a place to where someone who may not be educated about that particular subject can follow along, and people who are educated about that subject obviously can follow along as well. And that's what drew me to forming a relationship with Rouvaun as a mentor personally and professionally. I've known him now for about 2 years, and I mean, I lean on him for things. I call on him for his sagacious advice, and I appreciate you for being here. But with that being said, you also talked about finances. So can you talk to a little bit more about creating finance and creative financing, creating finance and being creative with your financing? Because I know you have creative ways of creating finance.
Well, I mean, the last few years, I've been doing what they call the non-QM space. So all of that is creative. I was working for a hedge fund called Clear Edge Lending, also SG Capital. And, you know, all that was, you can cash flow an investment property. It's called a DSCR, bank statement programs, which were out there, or people with a ton of assets, but still can't get a loan. You'd be amazed that you can't, if you don't have a job and you have $2 million in the bank and you can't get a loan, and you don't want to spend your money. So there's creative financing that way. So it's really out of the box. And then in terms of structuring a file, that's what my forte is, because a lot of times, when a person walks into a lending institution, sometimes they really don't have time to take the time to go over and analyze their file and figure out how to structure the file so it gets through to the underwriter and actually fund. So each case is individualized, and we work with them on a game plan on how to attack it. So as a mortgage broker, I have the ability to go with like, let's say 50 lenders, right? And so I know what each lender specializes in. So one lender may specialize in down payment assistance, right? So, okay, you can get in with no money down, all right? Well, that may not be your need if you were a Yahoo or Google worker and you need your RSU counted, which is restricted stocks. So who can do that and do it in less than 1 year? And so you got your jumbo folks over here that need help, that need to qualify because they're competing with a certain amount of loans. Then you got your self-employed people who don't want to report a lot on their tax returns. And then, you know, what do you do with them? So there's all kind of programs for them depending on how much money they want to put down and all that. So there's all kind of programs. I can fit them all into a box. I'm not really boxed into what my particular bank is doing. I can go out and if I'm not approved with the lender, I just go out and get approved with the lender because I know where to go, which lenders have what. So that's really important, and that's where the 30 years comes in. And then my background on uh, wholesale correspondent, which is what they call third-party originations, which I'm really behind the scene. Usually the lenders that I'm working with now either work for me, work with me, or I work for them. They're in one of those three categories. Or last one I just signed up, she was my number one competition in the market. So it was kind of weird, I'm being her client now. And that bank can do loans up to $30 million. So that's the fun part for me. I just don't have any restrictions. I'm my own boss, and I build a team. So it's really great that way. But creative financing is how you get into the home and sort of you think outside of the box. So if it's legal, then I want to be able to do it. I'm saying? So as long as it's within the legalities and we can be creative, then I can do it. If it's private lending, I got some private lending guys that will do it. And sometimes when I put people in a private money loan, the interest rates are a little higher, but there's always a game plan to get them out of the loan. Some people just stick them in a loan and you're like in an 8% range, I mean, what's the game plan to get them, rates are like in the 2s and 3s and low 4s for some folks. What's the game plan to get you down there so your payment actually goes down? So there's got to be a full gamut of how you get in. And then we were talking a little bit before we started was, construction financing. There's a lack of supply in this market, especially in Northern California. And, in 2099, around 2000, I was shopping out there for my first home, and I was getting frustrated. I make a pretty good living, a pretty good salary plus commission at that time. And the market was hot. It's a precursor to this market now. Big bang took little bang, as Ice Cube used to say. When they come in with their stock options. I mean, if you got $1 million in stock options and you drop it down back then, I mean, you got that house. You drop it on a house for a down payment. You want a $2 million house or $1 million, whatever it is, and you drop another $1 million on it, then you get the house. Cash is king, like it is in this market. So I built my first home, things like that. So if somebody wanted to build, I have lenders that will do construction loans. So just trying to whatever the situation is, we have to explore that and tailor that to that particular individual. That's what's really important.
That's great. You touched on quite a bit of things there. Now, what I'm getting at, and obviously I'm a real estate agent, so I know the differences. But however, our audience may not know what the difference is between a lender that you specified, a structured lender, so a bank, yes, versus a mortgage broker. And so, yes, what I've surmised from obviously your elaboration is that it's the flexibility and the options that you have versus a structured bank. Now, speaking to a first-time home buyer to someone that's looking to move up in property, what would be the benefit of reaching out to, say, a mortgage broker versus that structured, more structured lender?
Well, I get referrals every day, sometimes 2 and 3 times a day, where people have been turned down by a bank, for whatever reason, especially during COVID, because a lot of restrictions have come into the banks. They're not reacting very well to it. They're risk averse. So since I'm not a lender, I'm not restricted. I have, like 50 lenders, right? So, well, did this lender have a COVID guideline that won't do jumbo loans, that, it's a move up buyer? Like, for instance, I got a referral just last week. Borrower made a mistake and paid their American Express twice in one payment cycle, right? So American Express hit them for it hard, like 100-point drop. And this was a jumbo borrower. Uh, nice sister, you know, she is pretty much crying. And so, you know, my team got on it, getting her credit score boost back up to above 700. And I'm taking her to another lender that's going to allow her to do 10% down on the jumbo. She was at B of A, or, you know, one of the large lenders. And it was like, you know, you need to, she was buying in San Joaquin Valley. And they said, well, when you move back to the Bay Area, when you look over there, come back to us. And, you know, that's it. That's a perfect example, right? So, you know, you got your decision. That's it. There's no working with them. There's none of that. And a lot of our people need hand holding, man. It's a treacherous market out there. It's very competitive. And a lot of, you know, people don't know. They're like a babe in the woods, so to speak. And I'm here to just hold their hand, me and my team, hold their hand all the way through till the end. Like, I mean, literally, my team has spent hours just trying to fix her credit and that mistake. And, you know, we haven't got paid for anything yet. So it's a matter of doing it. I got another example the day before where the borrower was trying to refinance, husband and wife, ex-firefighter. They got turned down by a mortgage company and a credit union. And I can't see anything wrong. So they were turned down by the mortgage company because they said their debt to income, I'm explaining this, debt to income ratio was 42%, right, on a conforming. So debt to income is you take your gross income and you divide it by the debts on your credit report. So you come up with a ratio. Usually you want to stay for a qualified mortgage or anyway, qualified mortgage means you can sell it to Fannie and Freddie or Jumbo, and it's 43. So for them to say it was 40 was ridiculous, and so they got declined. And they got declined for some other reasons at the mortgage company, and it just kind of baffled my mind of, you know, what's going on and how they come to me. And I'm also a psychologist too when it comes to these borrowers because they're emotionally distraught. You know what I mean? So I got to calm them down, weed through all the emotions that they've gone through, calm them down, get them to my team, and push it forward and close these loans. So there's very rare where we can't close the loan, or at least come up with a game plan of what the strategy will be to move forward so you can close the loan. And that's the difference. That's a huge difference between just walking into a company and not knowing. You just want the financing, and they may give you a great rate if everything goes right. But if it doesn't, if it comes off the rails, if something inevitably does, then you need help. And that's what we're here for. And that's another reason why I started the company, because I was seeing on the back end, especially for African Americans, we were getting charged a lot more for our mortgages. And it doesn't now, it's coming out where it doesn't matter if it's online or in person, you know, you're getting charged a lot more. And we tend not to shop our rates. Black people and Hispanics tend not to shop their rates as much as some of the other demographics. So that's another reason why. So I'm charging, I know exactly what the market will bear for any demographic, and I took that, and that's what I'm charging pretty much for everybody.
Nice. I like that you touch upon a lot of different things, but what I'm taking from you is something that Benny and I have mentioned before is it's important to have somebody on your team, in your corner, in different industries, that's a resource.
Yes.
What I'm hearing you say is you're resourceful. You've got different options. You've got different connections. You've got different groups. And that's probably the benefit of you being a broker, not just a lender, but you're a broker, which means you can now contract to 10 different lenders if you want to. But you also mentioned, and I like people who have experience in doing things. That's a perspective that I come from when I talk to people. It's not just things that I've learned, it's things that I've actually done, that I've applied to my life, and I've seen success from it. So with that, I know you have success in things that you've done as well. I know you're a Cal graduate. I know there's a certain level of education that you have, but you're applying it to your life. So with that being said, earlier you mentioned that your first home, You bought the land and you developed it and you built it from there, which a lot of people think is foreign to them. They're like, oh my God. So can you touch a little bit on the real estate developing financing side of it and show and explain how not easy it is, but how accessible it is?
Yeah. So I did it out of frustration, and I felt that some realtors were playing games with these offers. So, you know, certain realtors in certain areas were kind of making sure it stayed in house, so they got the listing and the buying agent as well. So I got pretty frustrated back then, and there was a sense of urgency for me because my first child was being born, and you know, I put down the video games, and you know, that's when I figured I would really grow up, you know, and do only man things. So what I did was I looked for a lot, and I did it. It was so smart that you know, I before I even walked into and actually built the home, I already had like $600,000 in equity built in. And so the way the construction loan works is, let's say you buy a lot. I'll just give you the numbers that I did because I still remember them on the first one. So I bought a lot for $350,000. I put 100K down, right? That was the last piece of money I actually put down on the house. So I put the $100,000 down and bought the lot. So then I paid for what you call soft costs, which is the architect, the permit, and all of that up front. Then I got a loan, a construction loan. Once I got the plans and everything going, I got the loan. And so the loan was for construction costs to be about $650,000. So I got a $1 million loan, right? But the cool thing about construction and the architect and all this other stuff is you put it in the right neighborhood, the appraisal will give you future value for the house, right? So I got the cost at $1 million, the lot plus the cost. But the house is worth 1.6 in the drawings because the appraiser can see comparables in the area, like homes in the area that are worth 1.6 million. So before I even build it, I got equity in the house. So all I gotta do is build it. 100 grand, that's all I did. That's all I put into it. So I got a construction loan. And what that loan is it is a loan that bought the loan that I had for the lot. And then it gives you draws. So it's like an equity line, a line of credit. And then at each stage, you get a piece of the 650, right? So the first stage, I had soft costs. You know, I mean, in Oakland, you got to pay, you'd be shocked, you got to pay a $25,000 school tax. You know, I'm like, you know, I hope, you know, public schools at the time were, you know, any good in Oakland. So I just paid 25 grand like a private school. And then, you know, soft costs like that, architect fees and all that. Now, the kicker was for me is if you're owner occupied person, you can be your own general contractor. That's big, right? So that means you control the money. And I got rid of a lot of the fluff that can go into a home. And the fluff is usually a general contractor will control the funds and then they will mark up their fees inside each stage. So as you get a draw, they take their money out. So what I did was I got a general contractor, since I can be my own general contractor, but I got a real general contractor who was just a project manager of it. So I controlled all the money. And then each stage we got subs. So we got subcontractors for like foundation. We got subcontractors for the framing. And I got all the bids, and then me and the project manager went over the bids, and I took, you know, the fluff out, right? So that's a way I saved money and I stayed within budget. And then I walked into the house and I didn't go over budget. And that was my first experience it took about 2 years And the motivation was my wife at the time being pregnant with my first child. That really kind of like kicked in. And that was my first home. So it turned out to be a beautiful home. It was like 6,100 square feet out in Oakland Hills. And that was a hell of a first time home buyer, seminar.
Yeah, it was. Right, right. Real quick. So one, do you still have the house? And then two, after going through that process, what did you learn that you would do differently? Or would it be a rinse and repeat system that you kind of established?
Well, it was a rinse. My whole strategy was this, and it didn't quite work out. That marriage didn't work out. We're still cool, and we got 2 kids, but it didn't work out. But it was a rinse and repeat type of situation. My goal was to take that $500,000 free, tax-free, sell the house in 2-3 years, because after you live in a home owner occupied for 2 years, then you can sell it tax-free capital gains. Then you take that $500 and free and put it down on the next house, and you rinse and repeat, and you do that several times, and then next thing you know, you're living in $1 million mansion with no mortgage if you choose. So that was the game plan. At the time, I did build another house after that. Market crashed, and life moves on. But the formula's still there. I got the idea from the Oakland Hills and Berkeley fire. And so a lot of the builders up there were buying those lots back in the early 90s. I think that was like 91. They were buying those lots for like 40 grand. Mm-hmm. And then they just bought so many of them, they would do 2 a year and live in one. And then when they lived in one, they sold it every 2 years. And then they had one for their income and then one. And then it was like they were living in these mansions and then selling it every 2 years. I thought that was pretty dope. So I wanted to do that. Me and my ex-brother-in-law, we were sort of on that. And then I ended up just doing it myself on one end. He built the house, same size, down the street. So I think he's still doing it. I haven't talked to him in a while, but it was an idea. They encouraged me, my ex-brother-in-law encouraged me, because they thought the hardest part to do was not the actual construction, was the financing. Everybody needs the money. And, how do you get the money to get going? And the financing part was actually the easiest part for me. So yeah. I try to teach people that one every chance I can get who have the ability to make that happen. That's it's not a secret, but it's not something that is well known. And the fact is, it's so daunting. But then, I was looking in the hills, and you look at all these thousands of homes all around, like, they did it. How come I can't do it? You know what I mean? What makes those people who built these homes over the years better than me? My grandfather built his house in LA. How come I can't, build a house in 2000, 2003. So I did it. I did it once. I did it twice. And I think I'm going to do it a third time. And when I have time, and I'm trying to build a company and try to do that. It really, literally took 2 years of my life. And that was getting there 6 in the morning, staying there for an hour, having the contractors going, and then coming back at the end of the day, after a long day, sometimes with flashlights, at night, because you got no lights, checking on the work and to write notes for the next morning that you get up. So it's a project, and it consumes you, but you walk in to money, and it was a beautiful place too, as well.
Right. Real quick, because I know Khalil has follow-up. So you spoke on that. So obviously you're in mortgage financing. So and we're real estate. We understand the purpose of leverage.
Yeah.
So with you saving money with not having the general contractor overseeing the whole project versus the time that you spent going to the project twice a day to basically do one of the jobs that the foreman, the general contractor would do for you, would you do that process again? Would you elect to save that money? Okay, great.
No. I would do it. I would do it all day long, because I was so involved in it, and he gave great consultation. He wasn't there every day. He would be there on a schedule. But I got to know all my subs, and the next project, one of my subs became my GC, um, because we had a hell of a relationship. As a matter of fact, I still talk to that sub to this day, and so if I want to get down and go do it, I got a whole crew ready to go. So that's really that was important. It was sort of a man thing for me too. I mean, a lot of women do it as well, but for me, I was thinking of my grandfather and what he would have done. And I didn't, I hammered one nail just for photo op, but I wasn't in there, you know.
You went out there
The
with the gold
finance
shovel,
guy,
huh?
man. My hands are, paper, you know what I'm saying? So I'm
Right,
moving
right.
paper around. That's all I do.
Now, two things that I just heard. Benny, you mentioned leverage, and Rouvaun, you mentioned time several occasions. So understanding the time that you put in it, but the leverage that you get from the time that you put in it. What I want to say is, if I spent the same 2 years at a job, even let's say I made $150,000 a year, but I still got bills, I still got expenses. And even if I say I put money away in my 401k, which is a maximum of $18,500. So over those 2 years, you put $37,000 away. Even if they match you, let's say you get up to $50,000, the risk reward based upon the leverage and the time that you put into both situations, I think people need to realize the reward is far greater. The time that you put into you being the general contractor on your own home being built at already $1.6 million worth of equity, that's insurmountable compared to putting that same 2 years into a job where you may make some good money, but you aren't going to have the return on the investment of the time. You won't have the leverage after putting that same time in. So you're right, it did take some time, but the reason why you say you would do it all day over again is because you realize the leverage that gets you and the position that puts you in afterwards. And we need to have those same mindsets. Any entrepreneur knows it's going to take between 3 to 5 years to really get to that point where the business is kind of be self-sufficient and running itself. So I think it's the same thing when it goes into those types of projects. You got to give yourself that 3 to 5 years sometimes to put that time in, to be committed to that, to then have the leverage to then see the return on the investment. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and also the cost that I saved was anywhere between $50,000 to $100,000 in terms of cutting the GC out. So if you add that into it too, of course I'm saving $50,000 a year by doing it myself. So
exactly.
Yeah, so that's the added factor in it as well. And it was, trust me, I didn't know nothing about construction. So it was one of those things that I went with. The blessing for me was I was able to find a contractor, and I can't understate this enough. I was able to find a contractor and honest people, because that's where people get burned. They don't get the right contractor. They don't follow up on the referrals. They just go with the bid and not the work. And contractors can leave you high and dry, and you'll be in a big mess if you don't have the right folks. So that was really important. I was really blessed with that. I only had one sub that got a little funky on me that I had to, we were almost about to square off. Other than that, it was pretty smooth. It was pretty smooth. I had a good time doing it. That's why I wanted to do it again, and I did it again.
Nice.
Now it's so much valuable. Yeah.
It is.
No, I was just saying there's so much value in having the right team around you. And you talked about that earlier too, with your team and your mortgage company.
Yeah.
And understanding the experience that you obtained, the experience that you are at, that you've learned, and being able to provide that value on to your client is I mean, that right there in itself is worth, whatever services, whatever amount of fees that you charge your clients or help your clients. And those are things that your clients, 9 times out of 10, they don't see. They don't see the problems. They don't see all the things that's going on behind the scenes.
No.
And then having an experienced team, having someone that's experienced in their field and knowledgeable about the field and knowledgeable about every hiccup that could possibly happen, and getting ahead of that, right there. I mean, that right there makes the transaction much smoother. Sometimes we take care of problems that the clients are not even aware of unless we just update them. So that's the value right there, the experience and obviously the knowledge in the game.
Yeah. I mean, that is really important. I'm hitting them with a little technology too. I just don't want to be that. So I got a pretty state of art technology piece that I can choose myself. Usually as a lender, I'm usually in these committees. And then when we're trying to bring on new technology, I got to, deal with these roundtables. I can just make the decision and then pull the trigger. So we pull some trigger on the great stuff. So owning your own shop has been a dream come true with me, for me, after being, working for so long for so many people. And I had some great people. I worked for some great people. Very few, some people I didn't really care for, but for the most part, my career was pretty satisfactory, pretty rewarding, and I worked with some good folks. And I talk to people. I don't care if you're a CEO or you're the janitor. I talk to you the same way. And then you just stay real. And it's just all about like mind. So when you build in a team, you're trying to attract people that are like yourself, that have the same doggedness to get the job done. The same. I don't have to give you that ownership for this client because one of my processors just talked to the mom who's on the loan too, and they hit it off like that's her mom. You know what I mean? So that's really important to get those dynamics in there, and then people trust you, and they can trust you because there's nothing shady going on in the back. It's we're straight up and transparent about everything. That's really important.
Having a team is important, man. That's the reason why Benny and I are doing what we're doing. We're trying to grow our team. You realize that your team becomes different resources that different people you can depend on and count on. Like you said, people who are like-minded. Your team becomes your family. Your team becomes your friends. Your team becomes certain people in the community. So it's important that you build that team, like you said. Now, one thing that you did mention reminded me of what my dad used to say. My dad used to always say, a dollar saved is a dollar earned. He's big on, he used to always, man, a dollar saved is a dollar earned. And you mentioned a moment ago that being your own general contractor saved you between $50,000 to $100,000. Now, I talk to people all the time about being a business owner. Sometimes the benefit of the tax reduction that you can get if you do it the right way. There's certain ways that you can save more money through different strategies. And I call that creative revenue, so to speak. So speaking of that segues into this next question. Can you expound more on creative revenue and profit gains within highly competitive regional markets? Because I think you kind of touched up on it a little bit, but can we go a little bit further into that discussion?
In terms of profit gains for, California is, this is a gold mine for profit gains in terms of equity and appreciation versus my wife comes from Ohio, and sometimes we spend time back there. So I was looking at appreciation, which I saw houses that were for sale in 2000, looking at the history, and then 20 years later they were still the same price. So the appreciation game out there is different. There you're looking for cash flow, right? You get the cash flow out in the Midwest, you get the profit out in California and on the coast. So you got to know the area and then play the area to its maximum benefit. So a lot of people are holding off. I know a lot of good friends of mine are extremely intelligent. They've been holding off, waiting for another crash for the last 10 years.
Right.
Like, dude, you just missed on
too, man.
100% run on appreciation, and you just missed out on it. So and they're waiting for the next crash. And you never tell the same story twice, right? There's cycles, but the story doesn't come exactly like it did the last time. So if you're expecting all the moves because maybe you got hurt the last time, it's different moves this time. You can't write that story again. So the appreciation piece is really important, and that's where you make your profit. That's where, look, I just mentioned that my strategy was to live in a house. I already had $600,000 in equity in the house. My goal was to live in it, sell the house, because you can't eat equity. That's my saying. You can't eat equity. So once you cash out, I got free money.
Right.
So that is your tax. So that's not wages. That's home ownership is a way to leverage with the capital gain system, and a lot of the entrepreneurial. So you either do that with business or you do that with real estate. 90% of the millionaires and that are in America earn their way through real estate, and so that was one of the ways. If you are a wage earner where you have a W-2 income, I got people right now that are killing it, making $7,000 a month. They got 5 properties. They got multiple properties with equity. They don't even have a single family residence. They got multi-units, and one turned their multi-unit. Well, no, they do. One I'm thinking of, she has a single family residence. She turned it into a care home. That's another 100 grand she makes. She's about to retire. I mean, there's more than one way to skin a cat. So even if you're a W-2 income person, you got to have another hustle to make it here, because look, you're getting hit with, after everything is said and done, you're getting hit with 50% taxes. At least. First they get you up front with the 35% with the state and federal, and then you get hit with the sales tax. You get hit with everything. You get hit with taxes, taxes when you pay your bills. So you're getting hit a lot. And so how do you mitigate that? And the only way you can mitigate that is through either a business, a side business, or equity, or some type of game plan. If you don't have a plan, you're just sort of living this economic life as really a consumer. So the economy is 70% based on consumerism. The American economy is betting on that you will just consume. African Americans especially don't invest into the stock market, and we're falling behind on the home ownership gap at 44%. It moved up maybe 2% last year. So we're wealth gap, consumer gap. We got to participate in these things, and then have a plan for that. Yep. So, and hey, look, some plans don't work out. You got to be willing to take a risk, and it may not work out. You got to mitigate that, meaning you got to lower your risk by not putting all your eggs in one basket. But then you got to take a swing. You got to be able to take that swing. I took a swing early on, right? So you got to take that swing. You got to jump on the opportunities when they're there, and you got to be ready for those opportunities by having a game plan. At least if you lose, you at least had a plan.
What do they say about plans? Failing to plan is planning to fail. And this,
exactly, right.
You know how many people are planning to fail because they fail to plan? I mean, I see people every single day, and they planning to fail. And you're right. If you don't take a swing, it's guaranteed to go by you, and you're subject to now whether the umpire calls it a strike or a foul. But I'd rather take that swing and take that at bat into my own hands. So like you said, worst case scenario, you get out, you get another up at bat, but you gotta have plans, because without those plans, man, it's guaranteed failure if you have no plan. And then you gotta have a backup plan for that plan. I was talking to someone, you and I were actually talking earlier today, and you mentioned that you gotta have, you gotta think about all contingencies. You told me you gotta think about the good, the bad, and in the middle. You got to understand all 3 outcomes and all 3 possibilities to really have that real game plan and take it into assessment. And I think it's crucial that Benny and I, the first show we did, we talked about mindset, fixed mindset versus growth mindset. And I think every person that we continue to bring on the show continues to talk about the same things. You have to have a certain mindset. You have to have a certain team behind you. You have to have certain resources behind you. You have to be that resource to your community. So I think those things fall right in line with the theme of what we're talking about, which is globally empowering people and impacting people.
Yeah, and be learning based. You have to learn. And you had touched on that topic, Rouvaun. I mean, knowing what market you're in, that's educating yourself. Yeah. Knowing that, okay, yeah, we're in California, so we're not going to be able to cash flow too many deals. However, it's the equity is consistently growing here on average 6% annually over the last, what, 6-7 years, actually a little bit longer than that. So just understanding what market you're in. If you're looking for a cash flow property, you might want to look in the Midwest states. You might want to look in the southern states where you can buy low and instantly get cash flow. So going into investing, this is one of, and I work with a lot of investors, and understanding that, you know, I sit down with them initially when they first reach out to me, or I first have a first conversation with them, is knowing what niche there is, what niche they're investing in. And every investor, every seasoned investor has a niche. They don't just play everything out there or look for every opportunity out there. They have a specialty that they've found it works for them, or works for their system. And like I mentioned to you before, it's a rinse and repeat. So knowing what market you're in, educating yourself as to what niche you want to get into, and then now you start gravitating to those people that can help you with that niche, that can help you be that resource. And Khalil mentioned resource. We're not just talking about money. We're talking about resource. Your resource is your team. Your resource is your network. Your resource is your database. Your resource is the education that you take upon yourself. Now, there's a lot right now, we're 2020. There's a lot of free information out there. Yep. I say it all the time, YouTube University. You can learn anything from building a planter box outside to starting your own business. Yep. So, you know, you have to take it upon yourself to educate yourself, to stay learning based. None of us knows everything about the fields that we're in. However, we're continually learning. We're continually to build up our resources around us, and that's our network. So if a client comes to me and they have a specific niche that I'm not too familiar with, that I just may have general information about, I know somebody that they can reach out to, and I can put them in contact with that person. Right. So that's that resource, that's that value that, you know, that you have to consistently provide yourself.
There's nothing I love more when I talk to a client and then you see the light bulb go off. Like, you see the determination, right? You know, right. Because that's why they came to you, right? And they just want to get out of the circumstance. And so I love the client who didn't know they could qualify for a home, and they're sitting there. Yesterday, I'm like, dude, what have you been doing? He had a 780 credit score. Yeah. I mean, they're monitoring their credit scores more than ever before these days, right? And it was not Credit Karma, it was Experian. So it was a real score, and nice income. He had a little saved up, get him some down payment assistance. Man, I'm a slap him on the butt like a newborn baby in about Monday or Tuesday, and send him on his way to a realtor because he's ready to go, and he didn't know it. You know, he's sitting up there in one-bedroom apartments in a circumstance, and this guy could go buy for $450,000 house. I mean, the light bulb goes on, and then I get the ones where like, okay, this is gonna be my first one. Now the next one, right? So now they got it going. Now they could be in their mid-30s. I'm getting people getting the light bulbs at 60 something. You know what I mean? The light bulb just goes off, and I love to see that. That gives me more satisfaction because now they're using me as a resource, and now I can plug them into other stuff, and that's really what's really important to me.
Right. That's a true story. Actually, that happened with one of my cousins. They were renting in San Francisco and didn't think they would be able to purchase a home. They were in a situation where the landlord was wanting to move back into the property and was going to start evicting them. And so they're like, we don't want to deal with this landlord anymore. We're probably going to have to go rent again. Let's have a conversation with my cousin. Let's see where we stand. And they'll tell you now, like, they did not think they were going to be able to qualify. They did not think they were going to be able to get into a home. Hooked them up with one of my preferred lenders. They got approved. We found them a home in a very short amount of time, and I mean they're in love. So I mean it starts with that conversation, like you said. You never know until you know, and you start with that conversation. Okay, well, let's at least find out where I stand now, and if I'm not ready right now, we can at least set up a roadmap to get me where I need to go.
Exactly.
Establishing that GPS.
Yeah, it's a lot of anxiety on their part, right? It's a lot of anxiety and fear that they don't know it's okay, right? To really think this way because you've been taught and programmed to be a consumer or a renter all your life. And again, 70% of the economy is based on consumerism. It didn't used to be that way, but now that's where we are. And groups in particular, if your parents were renters and all of that, then you don't probably think you can, or it just home prices may seem too high and it just doesn't seem like you can afford it. So there's a lot of things that can make you afraid to take that step. And then, that's our job, to empower these people and to get them into the market. That's really important.
Yes. So I know we are coming upon the hour in a moment. I know you do. Look, when I first met you, you were doing all of your workshops, I think, weekly, and you were doing them face to face. Now the entire environment has changed. I think out here in Solano County and other counties as well, they've shut down restaurants, and I think we're going back into a shutdown for a while. So I know you have transitioned, because you got a growth mindset. You have transitioned to doing these things virtually through your Facebook and other formats. So when can we tune in to some of your home owner workshops, some of the different things you do about investing? Where can people find you? Where can people tune in? What times are you doing them? What platforms are you doing them through?
I'm gonna, glad you brought that up, Cleo. I'm gonna start doing 2 a month. And just look out for us on my Finance Us Facebook page and Finance Us page. So it's and you spell Finance Us PHINANCEUS. So it's just PHI, PHI, and then how you spell finance. And
tell them why you came up with the PHI.
Well, PHI is actually a mathematical term. This is my Berkeley coming out of me. And it's a mathematical term, and it's the formula is used to build the foundations of the pyramids. And so without that at right angle, it can't last for all these centuries. So I wanted that strong foundation for my company, and then so finance, and then I got the strong foundation. Plus we're financing, and then we're financing us. And it's kind of ambiguous because it could be U.S. and then us. So I like that ambiguity, and so that's how I came up with the name. It was me and one of my frat brothers, Lawrence Ross, and my wife, Toy, came up with it, and after long angst, and I like it a lot. So it has a lot of meaning for me.
Yes.
So
perfect. I just shared it with everybody, and
yes,
and I just put your information in the chat. So if anyone wants to go ahead and reach out to you, they have there's a link in the chat. Yes. Finance Us and your website as well.
Yeah, fantastic. So yeah, we're gonna have 2 this month. I'm gonna start doing some more Zoom meetings, and then sort of roll that out. And then I'm gonna do certain series too, because I'm not just gonna do first-time home buyers. I'm gonna do the creative financing type stuff, jumbo stuff that for move-up buyers as well, things that they need to think about along those lines. And when you get people and teach them how to fish, they come back, right? Mm-hmm. And they come back for your needs and as a resource. And I want to be that resource for folks on a consistent basis, because we're doing some good things. A lot of people are. I just want to share my experience.
Definitely. Maybe we can get you back to kind of do a monthly or quarterly or every other month, market update, market trends, and
oh yeah,
kind of speak to a specific niche.
Sure. Anytime.
Definitely.
We appreciate you for coming on today, man. Anybody tuning in, this was a great show. Look, I hope you guys are really taking advantage of the information we're bringing to you. We see we get 400 or 500, 1,000 views on these shows. If you have any questions, reach out to Benny or myself. Reach out to the speakers that we have. Please, Rouvaun is accessible. Benny's accessible. I'm accessible. Reach out to us through our social media pages, whether it's our individual pages or our combined business pages, global empowerment team pages. We're on Instagram. We're on Facebook. We're on YouTube. So any format that is your preferred format, you can find us there. But make sure you follow Rouvaun as well. Go to his page. Go to our Global Empowerment Team page. Go to our YouTube page. Hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button. There's more content to come. If you have specific topics you want to talk about, let Benny or myself know. If you think you want to be a guest on our show and you represent a compelling topic that's pertinent to our community, let us know. We'll get you on the show. But we want to thank everybody, whether you're watching it live right now, You're going to watch it later on today. You're going to watch it later on tomorrow, whatever it is. Thank you for tuning in. Reach out to us, but we'll be back for more content. Subscribe, hit the like button, and more content to come. Thank you, guys.
Thank you again. Everybody enjoy the rest of your day and have a purposeful rest of your week. Rouvaun, again, thank you. It was a pleasure, man. The show went by really, really fast. You had provided so much value. Thank you again. Everybody take care.
Yes.
Thank you.